I am as far beyond mutants as they are beyond you. Here's your look at the Diamond Select Marvel Select Apocalypse Collector's Action Figure with Accessories. Born in the small Egyptian settlement of Aqaba almost 5,000 years ago, the being originally dubbed An-Soba Noor was the world's first known mutant. Noor struggled throughout the countless ordeals, all the while formulating an ideology akin to the survival of the fittest. Using advanced alien celestial technology as well as his own almighty mutant powers, Noor became the mighty conqueror Apocalypse, influencing history throughout the ages and re-emerging in the modern era to wreak havoc alongside his chosen harbingers, the Horsemen. This Marvel Select action figure of Apocalypse is based on his appearance in Marvel Comics. It includes interchangeable hands and features 16 points of articulation. It was designed by Eamon O'Donoghue, sculpted by Gentle Giant Limited. I know with the lifespan that he's had, Noor needs no introduction, so we'll jump right to taking the tape measure and seeing how tall the figure stands. Though just before, of course, doing that, I'd like to thank the folks over at Diamond Select once again that did provide the sample of the Marvel Select Apocalypse that we could have a look at in this review. The figure is available right now in comic book stores or online if you prefer your purchases to be online. The figure is, though, going to stand about 9 inches in height. In fact, actually looking at him, he seems to be exactly 9 inches in height. And that translates to a figure that's 22.5 centimeters tall. We have big, we have small. Bringing first a couple of average-sized Marvel Select figures so you can see the differences of sizes there. Here's what the figure looks like, though, to the left, Captain America, to the right, Mr. Fantastic. Bringing those slightly bigger boys, here's what the figure looks like with the recently looked at Marvel Select Red Hulk. And, of course, if ever given the chance, I'll always bring him in. Here's what the figure looks like, though, unfortunately, was still with loose legs. Here's what he looks like with Juggernaut. I do like the choice of accessories that Diamond chose here for Apocalypse. Not only can the character in the comics increase his size, but he can also as well alter the forms and the ends of his forearms, adding additional weapons, for example, and they thought that ahead by including 3 different things that you can swap out with the existing forearms that he has right now. Backing up, though, just a little bit, if you did want to just at least change his hands, Apocalypse also comes included with a pair of closed fists. Not the most interesting of things to look at, especially when we look at the next several things, but closed fists still go a long way, especially if you want to have him posed on display, perhaps battling the X-Men. These just simply pop out from the existing hands that he has right now. You just pop those off from the forearms, you just replace them off with these ones. I'm not going to really do that. I'm just going to move these off to the side, though. Let's get to more of the interesting things. Now, again, Apocalypse can change the things on the ends of his arms, so they also thought that ahead by including things like a drill attachment. The drill is actually just going to swap out. So what we're going to do, actually, you know what? We'll do this right now. Instead of removing the hand that you would normally have done if you wanted to change, for example, to the fist, what you'll do instead is commit to the idea of taking off the forearm completely. This just detaches by the peg. You can see there's the hole on the inside of that. You're just going to remove that all in entirely. And then from there, you can just add the new drill attachment. One thing I should have really done, though, before I actually did this, popping this first in place, put the figure down here for a second. If we go back to looking at his forearm, one thing you may have already noticed is the fact he does have these hoses on the back of his body. These hoses, though, will plug into the sides of his forearms via this hole right here. I'll do it on this side so you guys can see what I'm talking about. You take the back of the hose here, which is about the only thing I would have changed differently here to Apocalypse. It's nice that they gave it as much of a length as they did, but I feel like the density of the plastic is too hard. You should have made it a little bit softer so that if, for example, you wanted to move his arm around, for example, you're not going to have to fight as much with a harder bit of plastic. Though this does plug into the little provided hole on the sides of his forearm. Now, again, Apocalypse does have that. But every time you want to move then his arm around, you want to move it out, for example, or especially forward, you can really feel like it starts to get tight. Even though there really is a lot of clearance allotted here, just because the plastic is so thick and dense, a lot of times it just unpegs itself from the forearm. Now that's with the arm that he has default out of the packaging. You may then be asking yourself, well, what about the drill? Well, actually, the drill does have that too. If you look on the side here, so we want to kind of spin this around this way. On the back, there is also, again, that hole, so you can take yourself the provided hose and plug that in place too. That's the same case also as well when it comes to his hook. The clawing tool that he has as well, very nicely detailed. Still making use of this metallic blue finish with some nice additional silver accents added in there as well. You'll see also that it does have that same hole. So you're just going to, again, replace it with it. Now, again, you don't have to necessarily have it on both sides where he has wielding weapons on both sides. But if you wanted to, again, you just pop the hands off. You want to do that? Okay, we'll do that. Detaching this from the side of his arm, we're just going to take that off completely. Plugging now in the claw tool. There we go. And then you're just going to take, again, the hose, and it's going to plug in place like that. So he basically has the means to attach everything onto his new forearms, except for one thing, this. He does have, again, like this mace weapon. Now, this is going to be unlike the forearms. You're not going to actually replace it with the forearms exactly. What you're going to do instead is you're going to take one of the forearms, and you're going to just only remove the hand. Just attach it like that. This is now going to replace with one of the hands. I'm just going to plug it in place like this. And then you're basically just going to remove one of the forearm pieces, or again, in this case, either the drill or the claw tool. And you're going to replace it with the ball mace instead. Love those accessories. I think, though, when it comes to displaying Apocalypse, might maybe just decide to have him displayed with maybe one weapon on one side, because I think that's almost a little overkill to have him out with it on both sides of his body. But I do like the idea that they included as many accessories as they did. Considering really as well that this figure is a pretty tall character, there's a lot more plastic that goes into, say, the likes of Apocalypse that it would have gone in, for example, to like Captain America, for example. Speaking, though, of his size, something that carries over from the earlier looked at Red Hulk. Despite his size, though, he's actually misleadingly light. He still has weight to him. I mean, obviously, if you're going to be comparing him, say, with the likes of Captain America, which just happens to be another Marvel Select figure I had on the ready, Captain obviously is notably a lot lighter. He is going to be heavier from the standpoint of his size, but he's not as heavy, for example, as earlier Marvel Select figures. We're talking like 10 years or so ago. When we did do the review of the Red Hulk, for example, I mentioned that the one from 2008 would have had probably a lot heavier of a plastic. The Thing and the Juggernaut, for that matter, even like Juggernaut that I had brought in just now, is a lot heavier of a figure, even though he's smaller of a size. So they seem to be using a different type of plastic. Head-sculpt-wise, though, the only other thing I would say for Juggernaut, though, is I'm not as crazy of a fan when it comes to the face that they chose to go with it. Now, for Apocalypse here, Apocalypse tends to have that trademark face that he has, where, again, the lips is like this, and then it kind of curves up the sides. Instead of doing that and just giving him his closed lips like this, they often instead kind of give him a grimaced face. I think it loses a little of that trademark look to Apocalypse by giving him the visible teeth. I would have rather instead, I think, given him just a closed mouth instead, just giving him that kind of proper looking, powerful look that Apocalypse has in the comics. But I think the teeth, I mean, it works okay. It does give him a chance as well to showcase some really stellar looking sculpting and equally well painted face sculpt. The only thing again about it, though, is it loses a little something of what I consider Apocalypse to be. Just because whenever I think of the character, I tend to only think of him usually with his lips closed like this. Still, though, for what it is, it's a nice looking head sculpt. I think they've really nailed a perfect looking color scheme for not only his head, but the rest of his body as well. His eyes are somewhat darker. They almost appear to be more of a dark rusted red. Then his pupils are very bright yellow, and they pop really well with the color that they chose for his face. All around, though, the face does look good. I just would have rather had the mouth closed myself, but that's own personal preference. For the rest of the figure's body, it's classic looking Apocalypse, down to the fact he even has the trademark A there on the front of his belt. Colors I think they chose are really good on this figure. You got the mixture of lighter blues. There's some gray-based blues there also as well. He's got also that little, I don't even get like a grate or a little plate that he has on the front of his collar piece here. That's also painted there nicely in silver. All in all, it's a good looking figure. The only thing I would have again said outside of my own, again, personal preference of having the mouth more closed is I do wish, though, that the hoses were a little bit looser. Had they used maybe like a thinner or more rubbery kind of plastic, I know it would be a little bit more susceptible to probably breaking right around here and probably even right here. Just though when it comes to moving his arms around, and you'll see really when I start to move his arms about, it feels like there's a lot of stuff pulling the arms back down. I mean, it also helps too that the joints just happen to be really, really tight in the shoulders. But even just moving his arm out like this, you can see how easy it was for that hose to remove. If you can also see too, like there's enough give going on here. So you may even just have to bring the arm forward and then bring the hose up and attach it back in place. Because doing it and having it in the arm in the default and then just moving the arm around, you're probably going to be popping that hose off in the process. For the figure's articulation, going back to Apocalypse's head's going to be on a ball joint, so it's going to rotate, I would say normally all the way around, but just because he's got this collar piece, it's going to make things a little bit more haphazard for that. Head's going to look down, head's going to look up, and you can also move it back and forth as well. As for the shoulders, this is the part again where you're going to have problems with the hose. The shoulders do allow really the arms to rotate all the way around. Although they are a little on the tighter side, you can also hinge as well the arms out. Fully at 90 degrees, maybe not quite that, maybe a little less than that. The figure does have a bicep swivel, a single hinge only in the elbow, and then again the elbow also rotates at the forearm there. If you have, say, for example, chosen the drill attachment, that will rotate here. If you, though, chose to go back to the idea of using the forearms, being that they plug in the exact same way, it also is going to give you the same swiveled point. The only thing he loses here is he has no additional articulation on the drill. If he had still the hand, for example, you'd be able to rotate the hand back and forth on the end of the arm guard or the end of this glove. For the top of his torso, Apocalypse does have an upper torso ball joint. He does seem to have as well a lower torso swivel, although it's really tight in this figure. The legs do split out. They're on ball joints. You can take the legs and move them forward. You can move them back. There is a swivel, and the swivel is about 3/4 of the way up the thigh. You can see it right there. Maybe you can actually rotate. So you can rotate on this side. This leg, it's just a lot tighter. So there's a 3/4 of the way swivel cut there in the thigh. The figure does have a single hinge in the knee. Allows the lower leg to rotate back and forth. And then it comes to the ankles, you can also move them back and forth and rock them back and forth this way as well. Figure does have, of course, like usually with Marvel Select figures, peg holes in the bottoms of his feet. So if you want to make use of a display stand, you certainly can, even though the figure doesn't come included with one. I look at the look of Apocalypse. Positive points, though, are that he's tall. I mean, obviously, if you're going to want an Apocalypse figure, you really want him to be towering over, for example, other normal-sized Marvel Select figures. Once again, we'll just bring in Captain America for a size comparison. Really should have had some Marvel Select X-Men figures to bring in for comparisons. Yeah, Apocalypse should be the size that he is, and I think they've nailed the size scale there. Colors are good. Colors are classic, obviously, when it comes to Apocalypse. The only thing I would say is two things. I'm not a big fan, really, of the big visible teeth on his mouth. I would have just preferred to have the mouth closed myself. That's my own personal preference. You may feel you like the idea of the mouth being visible. Hey, that's on you. The only other thing I would certainly say, too, is also making the hoses just a little bit more malleable, just a little bit more pliable, being that they could have used a softer plastic may have also helped as well to be able to have those go along for the ride when it comes to moving his arms. What you might ultimately have to do is what I showed you in this review, is move the arm first, then bring the hose around and reattach it. Because if you start down here with the arm already attached, and then you go to move the arm up, you might find those hoses pop off way too frequently. And here I am talking about overkill, only then to augment both the arms of Apocalypse here as we wrap up the review. Having the drill on one side, the claw tool on the other. You can also see as well, I've taken the hoses and attached those accordingly. The hoses are one thing that always fall off frequently. I guess in a way that's a safety precaution, because if they were permanently or more securely attached, then if you were to say move the arm and maybe like the plastic wasn't going to give way, there always could be a potential that the plastic hoses could break. I do wish, though, and something I still said in the review, that the plastic that they use for the hoses would have been a softer variety. I would imagine that they're probably not going to be... I mean, the way that they've attached the hoses clearly look like they're part of the mold. I can't see a section where they would have attached on the back of the belt, so they obviously would have used all the same plastic that the rest of the casting of the figure's body would have been, but still, softer plastic would have really helped much handier, especially if you want to move the arms around. You're not going to always have those hoses pop off. Again, it's probably best advised just to move the arms first, reattach the hoses, and display Apocalypse that way. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. Nice looking Apocalypse. You know, seeing how well they've done on a job for Apocalypse, and then having already looked at a pretty cool looking Red Hulk, one other figure I would love to see them approach. Have they approached yet a Mr. Sinister? I think Mr. Sinister would be a fantastic figure, courtesy of the folks over at Diamond Select. What other characters, doesn't have to be necessarily from the X-Men universe, would you like to see Diamond approach next for a Marvel Select release? Let me know down below in the comments. In the meantime, though, I'd like to thank the folks over at Diamond Select that did provide the sample of the brand new Marvel Select Apocalypse that we had the chance to have a look in this review. Good news, good news, good news. This guy's available right now in comic book stores. And good news, he's also available online. Pick your poison as to which way you normally buy for your figures. I usually like to go to local stores, but not always is the case that they have new Marvel Select figures. So a lot of times I usually have to order them online. If you guys, though, in the meantime, enjoyed this video, want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you'd like to stick around for more, please, thank you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and you're turning on the bell notification. We're going to have a lot more videos coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.